Previously on Heartland, the venue crisis was resolved through Amy and Ty's expertise and labor. The protected amphitheater location couldn't be used due to environmental restrictions, but Amy suggested Jack's hidden meadow on the original Heartland property as an alternative. Over 2 weeks, Amy and Ty led the transformation leveling ground, improving the access path, clearing selectively while preserving natural beauty. Georgie's initial disappointment transformed into appreciation for a location with more meaning and history than the amphitheater would have offered. Final walkthroughs showed the space was perfect. The family gathered for sunset in the meadow 1 week before the ceremony, feeling anticipation and gratitude. The episode ended with the venue prepared, the family ready, and 7 days until a wedding that would happen in a space created through family love and collaboration. Hello everyone, and welcome back to Western Flavors. If you're enjoying this season, please hit that like button and subscribe so you never miss a chapter. Last episode showed the venue crisis resolved and the hidden meadow transformed into the perfect ceremony space. Tonight, Georgie and Quinn's wedding day arrives with everything coming together in a celebration that reflects authenticity over tradition. Sometimes the most meaningful ceremonies are the ones that honor truth rather than expectation. Sometimes breaking convention creates beauty that prescribed tradition could never achieve. And sometimes family gathering to witness love becomes more powerful than any elaborate production could ever be. Asterisk. The wedding day arrived with weather that seemed almost impossibly perfect. August in Alberta could be unpredictable, scorching heat, sudden storms, or wildfire smoke affecting air quality. But this particular Saturday dawned clear and mild, with a gentle breeze and temperatures that would be comfortable for an outdoor ceremony without being oppressive. Amy woke before sunrise, her mind immediately jumping to all the details that needed attention today. She'd been up late the previous night doing final preparations in the hidden meadow, ensuring every element was positioned perfectly, checking that the solar lights along the path were fully charged, confirming the horses were calm and ready for their unusual role. Ty was already awake when she opened her eyes, lying beside her and clearly running through his own mental checklist of responsibilities. They divided the day's tasks carefully. Amy would focus on Georgie and the emotional support she'd need. Ty would coordinate with Quinn and handle the horses. Lisa would oversee the catering and reception setup. Lou would manage the overall timeline and vendor coordination. Peter would be with Georgie for the crucial moments before the ceremony. The house was quiet in the pre-dawn darkness. Most of the family was still sleeping, though Amy suspected Lou was probably already awake and reviewing her detailed schedule. The guests wouldn't begin arriving until early afternoon, with the ceremony scheduled for 4 o'clock when the light would be soft and golden, filtering through the cottonwood trees. Amy dressed quickly and walked outside to check the meadow one final time before the day's activities truly began. The improved path was beautiful in the early morning light, the solar lamps fading as natural light increased. When she reached the clearing, the sight took her breath away, even though she'd seen it dozens of times during the preparation process. The ceremony space was absolutely perfect. The seating area was arranged with simple wooden chairs positioned in a gentle semicircle facing the ceremony platform. White fabric draped subtly over the chairs added elegance without overwhelming the natural setting. The wildflowers that had grown throughout the meadow were at their absolute peak, purples, yellows, and whites, creating a stunning natural palette. The creek burbled peacefully along the meadow's edge, its sound creating exactly the ambiance Georgie had wanted. The memory table had been set up off to one side, positioned where it would be visible during the ceremony, but not the focal point. Photos of Jack, Tim, and Marion were displayed in simple frames alongside a single candle that would be lit before the ceremony began. The images showed each of them at their best: Jack with a horse, Tim laughing with family, Marion teaching a young student. The table honored their presence without overwhelming the celebration with sadness. Back at Heartland, the house began stirring around 7 in the morning. The bridesmaids Katie and Lindy were already awake and excited, though the ceremony was still 9 hours away. Their enthusiasm was infectious, but also slightly exhausting for the adults who were trying to pace the day's energy. Lou had laid out an elaborate schedule that accounted for every hour leading up to the ceremony. Breakfast would be casual and early. Mid-morning would be reserved for getting the reception area set up. Early afternoon was designated for the bridal party to begin preparations. Late afternoon would see final touches and the ceremony itself. Evening would transition into the reception and celebration. Georgie appeared around 8, looking surprisingly calm for a bride on her wedding day. She'd slept reasonably well despite the anticipation, and her demeanor was centered rather than anxious. She joined Amy in the kitchen where coffee was brewing and the morning was still peaceful before the day's intensity began.
How are you feeling? Nervous? Excited?
Both, but more excited than nervous. I know this is right, marrying Quinn, doing it here at Heartland, structuring the ceremony to reflect our values. The nervousness is just about the public vulnerability, not about the choice itself. They sat together drinking coffee and watching the sunrise through Fairfield's windows. The construction equipment that had been so prominent for months was gone now, the Heartland barn complete, and the Price Ranch development well underway. The property looked beautiful and peaceful, ready to host a celebration. Peter joined them in the kitchen, pouring his own coffee and sitting with his daughter on her wedding day. His expression showed the complicated emotions of a father about to watch his child transition into marriage. Pride mixed with nostalgia, joy mixed with a touch of melancholy about time passing and relationships changing. I'm proud of you. The wedding you've planned reflects who you are: authentic, thoughtful, willing to break convention when convention doesn't serve meaning. That takes courage. Thank you, Dad. I know some of my choices meant you didn't get the traditional father-daughter moments you might have wanted. I hope you understand it wasn't about excluding you. I understand completely. You're claiming your independence and your agency. That's more important than satisfying traditional expectations. And honestly, watching you walk down that aisle alone will be more powerful than the traditional format would have been. The conversation was tender and meaningful, a father and daughter connecting before a day that would change their relationship in subtle but significant ways. She'd always be his daughter, but after today, she'd also be Quinn's wife, building a household separate from her parents even while maintaining close family connections. If in tobble wet. Around 10 o'clock, the reception area preparation began in earnest. The rental company arrived with a tent that would house the casual buffet dinner and provide shade for guests during the reception. Lisa supervised the setup with her characteristic attention to detail, ensuring everything was positioned correctly and the space flowed well. The caterers arrived shortly after, bringing food in refrigerated trucks and beginning the process of setting up their serving stations. The menu Georgie and Quinn had selected reflected their values: locally sourced ingredients, sustainably raised proteins, vegetarian options that were genuinely appealing rather than afterthoughts. Everything had been chosen to be delicious, but also ethical. The florist made a final delivery of minimal arrangements that would enhance the natural beauty without overwhelming it. Small clusters of flowers for the ceremony platform, simple arrangements for the reception tables, and delicate bouquets for Georgie, Katie, and Lindy. Everything was understated and elegant, allowing the wildflowers and natural setting to remain the primary visual focus. Ty had gone to the barn early to prepare Phoenix and Sultan for their unusual role in the ceremony. Both horses needed to be groomed immaculately, their coats shining and their demeanor calm. He'd worked with them over the past weeks to ensure they'd be comfortable being present during an event with unfamiliar sounds and many people. Quinn joined Ty in the barn mid-morning, both men working quietly together on the horses. The activity provided a useful focus for Quinn's pre-wedding nerves, something concrete to do, rather than just waiting for the ceremony to begin.
How are you doing? Ready for this?
Absolutely ready. Marrying Georgie is the easiest decision I've ever made. The ceremony itself makes me a bit nervous, being the center of attention, speaking vows publicly, all of that. But the marriage itself? No doubts whatsoever.
That's the right attitude. The ceremony is just a few hours. The marriage is the lifetime that follows. Keep perspective on which matters more.
They continued working with the horses, their quiet conversation covering topics both related and unrelated to the wedding. There was something grounding about the physical work and the presence of the animals, a way to stay centered amid the day's heightened emotions and energy. Around 1 o'clock, the bridal party began their preparations in earnest. Georgie, Katie, and Lindy gathered in Fairfield's largest bedroom, where Lou had set up a complete getting-ready space. A professional hairstylist and makeup artist had been hired to help, but the atmosphere was deliberately casual and intimate rather than formal and rushed. Amy joined them, not as someone getting ready herself, but as support for Georgie. She'd brought champagne and sparkling juice for the younger girls, intending to toast Georgie before the ceremony. The mood in the room was excited but peaceful, exactly what a bride needed on her wedding day. Katie and Lindy were getting their hair done first, both of them practically vibrating with excitement about their roles as bridesmaids. Their sage green dresses hung nearby, simple and elegant in a way that would complement the outdoor setting perfectly. They chattered constantly about the ceremony, about how beautiful everything looked, about how excited they were to be part of this important day. Georgie sat in a chair by the window while the makeup artist worked on her face, keeping everything natural and subtle rather than dramatic. Through the window she could see the property spreading out, the completed Heartland barn, the pastures where horses grazed peacefully, the path leading toward the hidden meadow where in a few hours she'd marry Quinn. Lou was documenting everything with her camera, capturing these pre-ceremony moments that would be precious memories later. She photographed Georgie having her makeup done, Katie and Lindy giggling together, Amy opening champagne, the wedding dress hanging against the window with Heartland visible in the background. The dress itself was exactly what Georgie had wanted when they'd gone shopping weeks earlier, a simple ivory gown with delicate lace overlay, fitted bodice and flowing skirt that moved beautifully. It was elegant without being ostentatious, perfect for an outdoor ceremony, and cost significantly less than elaborate gowns that wouldn't have suited her or the setting. Around 3 o'clock, with an hour remaining before the ceremony, Georgie put on her dress with Lou and Amy helping. The moment was emotional for all three women, Lou seeing her daughter fully transformed into a bride, Amy remembering the scared 5-year-old Georgie had been when she first came to Heartland, Georgie feeling the weight and joy of the commitment she was about to make. Katie and Lindy were already dressed in their sage green dresses, looking beautiful and mature beyond their teenage years. They'd practiced their processional walk so many times that they moved with confidence and grace. Their excitement was palpable but controlled. They knew their role was to support Georgie rather than drawing attention to themselves. Peter knocked on the door around 3:30, asking if he could see his daughter before the ceremony began. When Georgie opened the door, his reaction was everything a bride could want from her father. His eyes filled with tears immediately, his voice catching as he tried to speak. "You're beautiful, absolutely beautiful. And I'm so proud of the woman you've become and the marriage you're choosing." They embraced carefully, mindful of not disturbing hair and makeup, but needing the physical connection before the intensity of the ceremony. Peter handed her a small wrapped box, his wedding gift to her, something he wanted her to have before she walked down the aisle. Inside was a delicate bracelet that had belonged to her grandmother on Lou's side. Peter explained that it had been passed down through generations, always given to daughters on their wedding days. He wanted Georgie to have it now, to wear during the ceremony as a connection to the family history she was part of even as she built her own future. Georgie put it on immediately, the sentiment meaning as much as the beautiful piece of jewelry itself. She was wearing something old and something borrowed, all in one gift, perfect for a woman who valued meaning over adherence to every single tradition. By 3:45, the guests had all arrived and were being escorted along the improved path to the hidden meadow. The walk through the trees created exactly the sense of transition and anticipation that Amy and Ty had envisioned when they'd prepared the route. Guests emerged into the clearing and invariably gasped at the beauty of the space, the wildflowers, the creek, the trees, the intimate seating arrangement. Quinn was already positioned at the ceremony platform with his best man, a fellow show jumper who'd been his friend for years. He looked nervous but also deeply happy, his eyes constantly moving to the path opening where Georgie would eventually appear. His parents and sisters sat in the front row, having traveled from Ontario and spent the past 2 weeks getting to know Georgie's family. The efficient Georgie's friend from the show jumping circuit stood at the ceremony platform reviewing her notes. She'd worked closely with Georgie and Quinn to craft a ceremony that reflected their values and relationship, and she was prepared to guide the event with warmth and authenticity. Ty had positioned Phoenix and Sultan off to one side of the ceremony space, both horses groomed to perfection and calm despite the unusual situation. A trusted, stable hand from a neighboring ranch was holding them, someone experienced enough to manage the horses professionally throughout the ceremony. The memory table had been placed where everyone could see it, the photos of Jack, Tim, and Marion visible reminders that family extended beyond those physically present. The candle had been lit, its flame dancing gently in the breeze. At precisely 4 o'clock, the officiant signaled for everyone to stand. The string quartet that had been playing softly began the processional music, not traditional wedding march, but a contemporary piece Georgie and Quinn had selected for its emotional resonance. Katie appeared first, walking slowly down the aisle with the basket of wildflower petals she'd scatter along the path. She moved with the practiced grace of someone who'd rehearsed thoroughly, her face showing concentration mixed with joy. Lindy followed, carrying her own basket and also moving carefully, aware that everyone was watching. When both bridesmaids reached the front and took their positions, the music shifted slightly. The guests turned expectantly toward the path opening, and then Georgie appeared. She stood at the meadow's entrance for a brief moment, taking in the scene, the guests standing, Quinn waiting at the ceremony platform with an expression of awe on his face, the horses nearby, the natural beauty surrounding everything. Then she began walking. The choice to walk alone was powerful in this setting. There was no question about her agency or her choice. She moved steadily toward Quinn with confidence and purpose, claiming this moment entirely. Her dress moved beautifully with each step, the lace catching the light filtering through the trees. Her bouquet was simple, a cluster of wildflowers that matched the natural setting. Peter watched from the front row with tears streaming down his face. Lou was crying beside him. Her hand in his, Amy felt her own tears beginning as she watched her niece, no longer a scared child, but a confident woman making the most important choice of her life entirely on her own terms. When Georgie reached the ceremony platform, she and Quinn faced each other. The officiant allowed a moment of silence for them to just look at each other and absorb what was happening. Then she welcomed everyone with words that acknowledged both the joy of the occasion and the deeper significance of what marriage represented. The ceremony that unfolded was everything Georgie and Quinn had envisioned. The officiant spoke about partnership and choosing each other repeatedly, rather than assuming marriage was a single decision made once and then never questioned. She acknowledged that modern marriage required ongoing commitment and adaptation to each other's growth and change. Amy read a passage from Mary Oliver about love and commitment, her voice steady despite her emotions. The words spoke to authenticity and building a life based on genuine connection rather than social performance. When she finished and returned to her seat, Georgie mouthed "thank you" with an expression that showed how much having Amy participate had meant to her. The vows themselves were the heart of the ceremony. Quinn spoke first, his voice carrying across the meadow with surprising strength despite his nervousness. He promised to support Georgie's career and ambitions, to respect her independence while offering partnership, to choose her repeatedly through whatever challenges life brought them. He acknowledged her strength and promised never to diminish it through possessiveness or insecurity. Georgie's vows were equally personal and powerful. She promised to build a life where both of them could thrive individually while also nurturing what they were creating together. She committed to maintaining her identity while also being fully present in their partnership. She acknowledged that marriage required work and promised to do that work with intention and love. There wasn't a dry eye among the guests as the vows were exchanged. These weren't generic promises, but specific, meaningful commitments that reflected who Georgie and Quinn actually were and what their relationship required to flourish. After the vows and ring exchange, the officiant invited everyone to participate in the communal unity ceremony that Georgie and Quinn had designed. She explained that each guest would be invited to come forward and place a stone in a collective bowl, each stone representing their commitment to supporting this marriage through the years ahead. A basket of smooth river stones had been placed near the ceremony platform. One by one, guests came forward, family first, then friends, placing their stones in the beautiful pottery bowl that would eventually be permanently installed at Heartland as a lasting reminder of the community support surrounding this marriage. Peter placed his stone with a hand on Quinn's shoulder, a father accepting his son-in-law and committing to support their partnership. Lou placed hers with tears of joy, a mother celebrating her daughter's happiness. Amy and Ty placed theirs together, aunts and uncles who'd watched Georgie grow and who committed to being present through whatever came. Katie and Lindy took the ritual seriously, each placing their stones carefully and speaking quiet words of support that only Georgie and Quinn could hear. Lisa placed hers with the wisdom of someone who understood marriage's complexity and beauty both. Quinn's family participated with equal sincerity, welcoming Georgie into their family as Georgie's family welcomed Quinn. The ritual took nearly 15 minutes as all 50 guests participated, but it wasn't tedious or awkward because the intentionality was clear. Each person was making a genuine commitment rather than just performing a prescribed action. When the last stone was placed, the bowl was nearly full, a visual representation of the community surrounding this couple. The officiant then invited a moment of silence to honor those who couldn't be physically present. She specifically named Jack, Tim, and Marion, acknowledging their importance in shaping Georgie's life and the values she brought to this marriage. The silence lasted perhaps 30 seconds, everyone reflecting on losses and absences that were part of every family's story. When the silence ended, the officiant smiled broadly and announced it was time for the most traditional element of the ceremony. By the power vested in her by the province of Alberta, she pronounced Georgie and Quinn married. They could kiss if they wished, no pressure to perform, just freedom to express what they felt. The kiss was sweet and genuine, not prolonged or theatrical, but authentic. When they pulled apart, both were smiling widely. The string quartet began playing celebratory music, guests erupted in applause and cheers. As planned, Ty brought Phoenix and Sultan forward for the departure. Georgie and Quinn would ride together from the ceremony site back toward Heartland's main buildings, a symbolic departure that honored their equestrian identity and created a unique concluding moment for the ceremony. Georgie mounted Phoenix with practiced ease despite her wedding dress. Quinn did the same with Sultan. The sight of bride and groom on horseback, riding away from their ceremony through the wild flower-filled meadow with golden evening light illuminating everything, it was breathtaking. The photographer captured the moment from multiple angles, knowing these images would be treasured forever. The guests followed on foot, walking back along the improved path toward Heartland where the reception tent awaited. The procession was informal and joyful, people talking and laughing, the atmosphere celebratory and relaxed. By the time everyone reached the reception area, Georgie and Quinn had dismounted and were greeting guests informally. The casual reception format meant there were no receiving lines or formal protocols, just a buffet opening for dinner and open space for mingling. The food was delicious and abundant. The caterers had executed Georgie and Quinn's vision perfectly, locally sourced ingredients prepared simply but expertly, options for various dietary needs, everything served with attention to both flavor and ethics. Guests filled plates and found seating wherever they wished, conversations flowing naturally across tables and groups. Around 7 o'clock, after everyone had eaten, there were toasts. Peter spoke first as the father of the bride, his words balancing humor and emotion as he reflected on watching Georgie grow up and expressed his confidence in her choice of partner. Quinn's father spoke next, welcoming Georgie into their family and expressing gratitude for the love she and Quinn shared. Lou gave a toast that had everyone laughing and crying simultaneously, sharing stories about Georgie as a child, acknowledging the journey that had led to this day, expressing her profound joy at seeing her daughter so happy. Lisa offered wisdom about marriage from her decades of experience, her words both practical and deeply loving. Amy had prepared a toast but found herself too emotional to deliver it smoothly. She spoke about watching Georgie grow from a scared 5-year-old into this confident, accomplished woman. She acknowledged Jack and Tim's absence, but also their presence in the values that had shaped Georgie. She welcomed Quinn into the family with genuine warmth and expressed her certainty that this marriage would flourish. The first dances happened around 8 o'clock as the sun began its descent toward the horizon. Georgie and Quinn danced together first, choosing a song that held personal meaning rather than a traditional wedding dance standard. They moved together with the ease of two people who'd been partners for years, comfortable and connected. Then came the parent dances. Georgie danced with Peter first, both of them emotional about the father-daughter moment, even though it was happening after the ceremony rather than as part of the processional. They spoke quietly as they danced, private words that nobody else could hear. When the dance ended, Peter kissed his daughter's forehead and released her to her new life. Quinn danced with his mother, their connection evident in how naturally they moved together. Then, in a gesture that touched everyone, Georgie invited Lou to dance as well, daughter and mother sharing a moment that acknowledged their journey together through years of challenges and growth. As full darkness fell, the solar lights along the paths began glowing softly. String lights in the reception tent created warm illumination. The atmosphere was magical, intimate, and joyful, exactly what Georgie and Quinn had envisioned. Dancing continued with guests of all ages participating. Katie and Lindy danced with each other, with their parents, with guests who invited them. The mood was celebratory but not frantic, joyful but not overwhelming. Everything felt proportional and authentic. Around 9:30, Georgie and Quinn prepared to depart for the night. They weren't leaving immediately for a honeymoon that would come later after show jumping season obligations were fulfilled. But they were leaving the reception to spend their wedding night in a beautiful hotel in nearby Banff that Lou had booked as a gift. Instead of a traditional exit with guests throwing rice or blowing bubbles, they simply said their goodbyes informally, hugging family members and thanking guests for coming. The departure was understated and perfect for who they were, no spectacle, just gratitude and love. As they drove away, the reception continued for those who wanted to stay. The party would go on for another hour or two, but the couple at its center had transitioned into their new life together, married, committed, and supported by a community that had witnessed and celebrated their choice. Immer Bisset. Amy and Ty stood together watching the taillights disappear down Heartland's driveway. The evening had been absolutely beautiful. Everything Georgie had planned had worked perfectly, and the unconventional choices had created something more meaningful than any traditional template could have achieved.
She did it. Got married on her own terms, in a way that honored her values and her family both.
And it was perfect. Watching her walk down that aisle alone so powerful. All the choices that seemed unconventional when she first described them made complete sense when they actually happened.
They walked back toward the reception tent where the remaining guests were still enjoying the evening. Lisa was dancing with Peter. Lou was talking with Quinn's family. Katie and Lindy were giggling with friends they'd made among the guests. The atmosphere was warm and joyful, exactly what a wedding reception should be. Around 11 o'clock, the reception officially ended. The guests departed with hugs and thanks. The rental company would return the next morning to break down the tent and seating. The caterers packed up their equipment and leftover food. The string quartet loaded their instruments and departed with payment and gratitude. The family gathered briefly before everyone went to bed, all of them exhausted but happy. The day had been long and emotionally intense, but also beautiful and meaningful in ways that would be remembered forever. Lisa observed that it had been one of the most authentic weddings she'd ever attended. Everything from the ceremony structure to the venue to the reception format had reflected who Georgie and Quinn actually were, rather than who tradition suggested they should be. That authenticity had made every moment more powerful. Lou agreed, noting that she'd initially been nervous about some of Georgie's unconventional choices, but watching everything unfold, she'd understood why each element mattered. Walking alone, personal vows, horses present, communal unity ceremony, all of it had created a ceremony that was genuinely Georgie rather than a performance of someone else's expectations. Peter acknowledged that letting go of the traditional father-daughter processional had been difficult for him initially, but watching Georgie walk down that aisle with such confidence and purpose, claiming her choice entirely, had been more moving than the traditional format would have been. Her independence was something to celebrate, not suppress for the sake of tradition. As everyone prepared for bed, Amy found herself thinking about Jack and Tim and Marion, all of whom would have loved this day. Jack would have been proud of Georgie's choices, understanding that she was honoring values over convention just as he'd always taught. Tim would have cried openly and embarrassed everyone with his emotional speech. Marion would have quietly celebrated seeing another generation choosing authentic partnership over prescribed roles. The hidden meadow sat peaceful under stars, the memory table still in place with its candle long since extinguished. Tomorrow the space would be restored to its natural state, but the memory of today would remain Georgie Flemming Morris McGregor, officially married to Quinn McGregor, surrounded by family and supported by community, beginning a life together that honored the past while building toward a future entirely their own. Tell us. Asterisk, asterisk. The episode ends with Georgie Flemming Morris McGregor officially married to Quinn McGregor. The wedding day unfolded perfectly with ideal weather and careful preparation. The ceremony captured every meaningful element: Georgie walking alone down the aisle with confidence, personal vows that reflected their actual relationship, Phoenix and Sultan present as planned, the memory table honoring Jack, Tim, and Marion, the communal unity ceremony where all guests participated. The reception was casual and joyful with delicious food, heartfelt toasts, and dancing that continued into the evening. Georgie and Peter shared a father-daughter dance despite her walking alone during the processional. The departure was understated and authentic. The family reflected afterward that the unconventional choices had created something more meaningful than tradition would have achieved. The episode ends with Georgie and Quinn beginning their married life, the family exhausted but happy, and the hidden meadow peaceful under stars, a space that had hosted a celebration honoring authenticity over expectation. Asterisk, asterisk, you're Suffolin, asterisk, asterisk, next time on Heartland, asterisk, asterisk, Ty, Amy, and Lou's insane gift to the newlyweds is revealed. While Georgie and Quinn are on their brief wedding night getaway, the family works together on a surprise that will transform their lives. A piece of property adjacent to Heartland becomes available, and the family purchases it as a wedding gift, a place where Georgie and Quinn can build their own home while remaining close to Heartland. The gesture is enormous and demonstrates the family's commitment to supporting the marriage practically rather than just emotionally. The newlyweds return to discover the incredible gift. The episode explores family support taking tangible form and the continuation of Heartland's legacy through the next generation.